Coach, thank you so very much for joining us here on the Warm Down Pool. I'm excited to talk with you. Obviously, I am a resident of the Bluegrass State, and the success that St. Xavier High School boys swimming has had is legendary here. If I'm not mistaken, we're at 35 in a row right now.
That is correct.
35 in a row and like 60 plus total high school state championships, if my math is right. That is an incredible feat. And it's not like you guys are the only show in town. There's really talented athletes who have come out of the state of Kentucky. So congratulations on number 35 in a row here.
Thanks so much. Yeah, the talent is definitely statewide. So it's something that, we've seen that. We've seen an increase in talent across the state. And, we have to be on our A game. And the titles that we won 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago aren't going to help us today. So, that's a constant. We're constantly trying to reinvent ourselves, constantly trying to make our program better, and constantly trying to reach that next level. But, what's so unique is at the high school level, how much these kids buy into it. I mean, they buy into the tradition, they respect the tradition, and the bottom line is it matters to them. And I don't think you get the success or reach the success that we've had if it doesn't matter to them. And I mean, they are fully invested. They're all in, they own it. And, they're really proud to be a part of this program and constantly pushing each other. I mean, obviously we have a very, very competitive program and one that kind of works on a system where 2 pushes 1 and 3 pushes 2 and 4 pushes 3 and so on. And, it's really unique. It's a great position to be in, and lucky that St. X is so supportive. They are very supportive of swimming and put us on the front porch of the institution quite many times just to be able to represent our school. And, we don't take that for granted. Something that we're really proud of and something that we respect.
I think what's also impressive is you're 2-time national high school champions, 2021 and 2022, correct, Coach?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. We really, we've always been dominant statewide and also in kind of our local community. We set a goal a long time ago. This was not something that happened overnight to be, we wanted to be number 1 in the city, number 1 in the Commonwealth, and number 1 in the country. And it's been it's been quite a journey, but the fact that, we have established ourselves as one of these, top national programs, has really pushed us to new heights. And I know that, we're seeing things on our level. I mean, COVID was a case study in so many things. I mean, vaccines and mandates and timelines. And, we've really fully taken advantage of that where people can work remotely. We have had some talent or an influx of talent come into our state from California, from Arizona. We do have a transfer coming down from Chicago just because people now, can still work remotely, or, they're choosing possibly cities in the Midwest that might have a lower cost of living and might be more enticing. So it's kind of changed the game a little bit. And I think that's one of the things that we talked to our team about when COVID hit and, the shutdowns. We talked to every one of our students, and we have over 100 students in our program, 100 males in our program, that we felt like, some of the household names and some of the top programs could take some hits if they weren't willing to adjust and they weren't willing to pivot. I think the one thing that we learned throughout that process was that you really have to maximize the moment. We came out of COVID and we were setting pool records left and right, setting all of these incredible times just in dual meets because, although we had a championship on the calendar, no one knew if it was going to happen. I mean, you couldn't look more than a week ahead. So I think for our students to really accept that and kind of embrace that mindset was very helpful. I really don't think we've stopped. I mean, I felt like, every race matters, every dual meet matters. And that's been able to allow us to accumulate a lot of these power points that you need at the end of the season. So a credit to our students and a credit to the job they've done. I have a ton of respect for them because basically, we threw out a plan and they accepted it, and they had to make some changes. But it's been pretty incredible to see. And really their growth and their maturity has just been incredible. And we're really proud of it.
I know I've talked to a bunch of other coaches, and obviously I experienced it myself, that with COVID, we had to get a whole lot more creative with how we had to train our athletes because we were having to deal with social distancing as well as having to deal with people going in and out of contact tracing or testing positive and being out for some time. And I think what we really discovered in our sport, and track and field is another one I think has found the same thing, is that there are multiple paths to success. And the traditional ground and pound yardage mentality is kind of going by the wayside a little bit because I think coaches are becoming more efficient in their training. And I have always applauded high school coaches. I've never coached high school in my entire life. I've coached age group, I've senior, I've coached college. High school is a completely different animal and it's almost alien to me. But high school coaches, like you mentioned, you have 100 athletes that you got to be creative when you train. So talk to me a little bit about how you develop a high school season plan with that many athletes, because the one that would blow my mind with it is how do you get to know these young men and how do you get to know who they are as people as well as swimmers? So walk me through the St. X game plan.
Yeah, no, it is very time consuming. I like what you said about how many different paths there are to success. And I think that's one of the key fundamentals or one of the key foundations in our program and part of our culture is that, for some, we get kids that, just want to be a part of the team that might be on a beginning level all the way to, some of the highest, All-American times, that are, on a high school level. So we do have a very multifaceted group team. So we do spend a lot of time working on that culture. And, one of the things that stuck with me early on in coaching was, and there's so many parallels to coaching, and I think coaching's a copycat profession anyway, but I heard Don Shula speak and he said, that, can't expect more from the team than you do of yourself. I think that's always resonated with me that, you have to put in the time and you have to put in the work is what you have to do. And that's what we ask of our students. And our students want to see the same thing in the coaches. And they're always watching and they're always observing and they're always looking. And by no means do I do this by myself. I have one of the best coaching staffs in the country, and I have just some incredibly dedicated assistant coaches who just have a passion for the sport and have a passion for St. X. And we have really, I think all of my coaches I have coached at one time. I've been doing this for a long time, and they've been such an asset. But I think, one of the things that we do try to maximize what we do in the water and we try to maximize what we do out of the water. And our team captains will actually, they will teach some of our beginning level swimmers streamlines, and they will teach some of these beginning levels, swimmers, race strategy and some of the strategic part of the sport. And I think that, that's good for many reasons because it builds that kind of unity. It builds that kind of atmosphere. And it builds that culture of support. And I think that we want our captains to be role models, and we want part of the team to look up to them. But, that's earned and that respect is earned, and they put in a lot of time. So we do lean on our leaders, and we're a big leadership team as far as, getting an investment from them and them, working with the team and working with practice. But, I think one of the things that, our whole true north at St. X is to max your potential. And I think the way that you max your potential is through that growth mindset. And, going back to our conversation just a minute ago about COVID, you always had to learn. I think you always have to learn. And I think that's one of the things that we really promote with our students that, there is a way to get faster. There is a way to get better. But, you always have to be part of that. It's got to be a learning process. The hard work that I mentioned earlier, I don't think nothing can take the place of actually putting in the time, putting in the investment. The big thing is just determination, not validation. I don't think we've ever caught up with, we're this or we're that. I think that, we're a very determined program. And I think we're always trying to push that. We're always trying to push to that next level. And I think that, you can never stand still. You can never be complacent. And I think that's one of the things that we talk to our students. And I think that, our program's constantly evolving. I mean, we always try to, there always has to be a different look each year. We've got a lot of talented people, like I said, that on our staff that, constantly throw out different themes and constantly throw out, different goals for the students. And, that's a big part of our collective success. And I think that, to conclude the question, I think all of us at St. X, we have this collective responsibility toward one another, meaning that we take ownership and that, that we set new standards and we set new goals each year. I mean, I teach marketing here, and I think one of the keys to marketing is, you got to keep it fresh. I mean, you got to, you can't just recycle things. You have to constantly infuse new concepts. And I think that's one of the things that we try to do with our students and we try to do in our program.
Talking with a lot of coaches from a lot of different areas of athletics, I've seen that more as a prevalent thing of, if you're doing the same thing you were doing 5 years ago, you're 10 years behind everybody else. And I think evolution in our sport, especially with the sports science that's coming out that we're finding in swimming about efficiency of strokes, efficiency in training, I think a lot of coaches have taken what track and field has done. It has done for a long time. I think we're finally taking notice. Track figured out a while ago, you can't have a marathoner run 10 times a marathon in a training session. And they got a little bit more efficient. But even you look at sprinters nowadays, and I've always considered high school swimming a sprinter's paradise, and I'm a 400 IMer, so distance swimmer. It was not. I was an okay high school swimmer. I was much better in club and USA swimming in college. But looking at the model of training and looking at how sprinters are, it's a lot more power-based than it ever was a yardage-based mentality. And we're seeing that at the collegiate level. I'm seeing it a lot more at the high school level. And it plays to the strengths of the athletes, I think, in many ways. But one of the things I've always been fascinated with, and I've coached club for years, obviously I'm a college coach now, balancing the club versus high school relationships. Because I grew up in Ohio. Once swim season started, boom,
right.
You were done with your club. You were not allowed to do anything with them. Indiana, it was kind of a partnership a little bit. And then in other states, it was go train with your high school or your club team. We'll see you for high school dual meets and then state and so forth. How are you able to navigate that? Because you've got some great clubs with Cardinal Aquatics, Triton Swimming. Obviously, Lakeside is a huge successful program. How are you able to balance that? Because I'm sure you got athletes who go multiple different directions.
Yeah, it is true. And that's the way it is in our state in Kentucky. I think the biggest thing is communication. I think that, we're constantly communicating with the club coaches. And as you said, we're very blessed here in Louisville to have some great clubs. And, I coached under Mike DeBoer for 10 years. I was the head age group coach at Lakeside before I came to St. X, and have been at St. X now 14 years, going on 15 years. And, so some incredible, coaching. And we are very blessed to have, the club structure that we have in Louisville. But I think, I think the one thing is that, with that, you have to really take the athlete. And I think we're very mindful, and I'm very mindful of having coached club for so long, what their training looks like and what they're going through. And then also, it's helpful that I'm in the classroom too. So, I mean, I really try to put myself in the student athlete's shoes. And look at what they're going through and what their training regime is. And I think that I wasn't always, in my early part of my career, I don't think that I would have put listening probably on the top of my list, but I think that's one of the things. I think that's one of the most underrated forms of communication. And I've really tried in kind of more recent years to listen to the student athlete. And I think because the ones that are dedicated and the ones that are doing doubles, 3 and 4 days a week, and then, they're in your AP classes here at St. X, they're balancing a lot. And I mean, they're trying to, work through that. So it's really my role to listen and to make sure that, that I'm not piling on or I'm not giving them, too much, because I think, at the high school level, they're students. I think in the college level, they're student athletes. And I think that's one thing that you have to keep in mind. And I think that's how you have to separate it. And they are still really developing, at this high school level. So I think that, that's one of the big things is that I try not to make kids have to make choices. We will plan our meet schedule around a lot of the club meets just to make sure that they're not having to decide or they're not faced with a difficult decision. And a lot of it is just everybody working together. And I'm really blessed. I think the swimming community, a lot of kids are swimming in Louisville, but I think that, everybody works together, and I'm really very positive on what's happening in our city and how everyone, kind of works together in that aspect. And I have a ton of respect for the club coaches here in Louisville, a ton of respect for what they do. And, we really do. I feel like we have a great relationship. And I think that's really our program has benefited from that, just being positive and really just communicating. And I think that's what you have to do, and then obviously, your student athlete. I mean, could we travel a little bit more? Sure. But right, in the middle of our season with high school swimming being a winter sport in Kentucky, you have junior nationals, you have a lot of these meets, you have the US Open, you have a lot of these meets where, you have that tier pro series. So, we do keep that in mind, just their schedule. And so, as part of our scheduling, we do kind of look at, the whole aspect of what they're going through as students and what they're learning.
I was always jealous of my college teammates when I found out that where they came from, that they were still able to be with their club programs. Yeah. I loved my high school. I swam for an amazing coach. He's the primary reason why I'm doing what I do now. I was going to be a lawyer, and then Coach Burrows at Glen Oak High School in Canton, Ohio, influenced me more to go the coaching route. And I'm a way better coach than I ever would have been a lawyer. There's no question on that one. But I was always jealous because, again, being a distance swimmer, the 400 IM, the mile, T-fly, T-back, those were my babies. But in high school swimming, it was, all right, you're doing the hundreds of stroke, or the 500 was the distance event. And I'm that's a long sprint. Middle distance,
yeah, no. I had to change, because working with Lakeside and working club, like you said, I mean, I was training kids for the 4 IM, training kids for the 1,000, training kids for the mile. And I had to totally revert. When I got here, I'm like, oh my gosh, these workouts, I mean, they're all about speed. I had to step way outside of my comfort zone because I swam distance too. So, I mean, I gravitate toward that distance mentality. But, in the high school, I mean, you can pull 3 events, just swimming a 50, basically. So it is about speed. And, but one of the things that has helped us here at St. X, I have had a lot of kids that might have swam when they were younger that have gone the football route or the basketball route or even the baseball route, and then have come back to swimming. And, you look at a 6-lane, 25-yard pool, and there's not a whole lot of water. So if you've got some athletes, we've had kids that have swum for us before that have played in the SEC football championship game, that have pitched on an NCAA level. And that's what's so unique about it, where, I love the multi-sport athlete. I always have. And I feel that, you gain a lot from having those guys on a squad or on a team. And, and it doesn't take much. I mean, we've had football players that have come through and, done the 50 free, anchored our 200 medley relay, led off our 200 free relay because they have an incredible start. And, they're 21 or 20 point, and they're walking off the football field in December after some of these, high school all-star games. They train a month, they're in shape, and they make this incredible contribution to our team. And it is a very much sprint meet, no doubt at all.
I remember growing up in high school in Ohio. I think I was in college at the time. There was a sprinter. I think he went to Kettering Alter, Jay Tant, beast of a sprinter, 6'5", chiseled. And everybody's like, oh, he 4-time state champion in the 50 and the 100 freestyle, just a machine. And everybody said, where's he going to swim? Well, he's going to Northwestern. Oh, they're really lucky to have him. He's playing tight end. Yeah. What? And then he ended up getting drafted and playing in the NFL. So
crazy.
I always said early in my career, swimmers were very unique. We've always dealt with the center of buoyancy rather than the center of gravity, which is why swimmers will trip over their own shadow, and that they weren't really versatile athletes. And I think that was true for a very long time. Swimmers were that was the one sport we could do. We might be able to run a little bit, but those were even rarity. I knew very few athletes that were multi-sport and were successful in all of them. But I think you're seeing that more now. You're seeing guys who can hit a baseball, who can make a 3-point jump shot and just happen to go 45 in the 100 freestyle, or ladies who could crush a home run with softball and turn right around and drop a 501 500 freestyle. So I think we're seeing more athletes in our sport, and it shows, because if you look at some of the swimmers nowadays, they are machines. They are built, chiseled gods. I was a gangly 155-pound middle distance to distance freestyler, and I'm seeing guys who are shredded, who are just amazing. And I think that's a testament to the fact that we've got kids that maybe they traditionally would have looked at the more team sports, but they're finding their passion in the pool. And I love that about our sport, is that we're seeing a lot more of what I would call pure athletes.
Yeah, well, and it's a data sport, and it's a very technical sport. And if you get into the technique, you can improve, and you can see that improvement. And, the great thing about swimming is that, and especially on a club level, when you sign up for a meet, you're going to swim,
Yes.
where you're not on a team sport, you could possibly sit the bench, or you could possibly where you might go to multiple games and never see the light of day on a playing field. And so, but they may be incredible athletes or great athletes. And, and I think that's where the team aspect comes in. And that's why I enjoy high school swimming so much, that, we really promote the team. We promote our core values of culture and respect and details. And of course, excellence, with St. X being in our name. But we get a ton of those athletes that just want to be a part of a team. And, the beauty of it is that, that with meets and with multiple heats, that you can sign up, or you can be a part of this program, and you can have that opportunity. And I think that's the beauty of some of these, Olympic sports or individual sports, that you do get a chance, to showcase your skills.
I had a teammate in high school who was a phenomenal baseball player, ended up playing, I think, up to AAA at one point. Was a solid swimmer, nothing great. He'd be the first one to tell you that he'd be the seventh man on a 400 freestyle relay. But he always said the one thing that he loved about swimming, and it's part of the reason why his kids are involved in swimming and not so much in baseball anymore, him starting wasn't based on somebody's opinion. And baseball is still an analytic sport. If you can hit, and your batting average. But he played soccer, he played football, he did all the traditional sports. And a lot of times he's like, I know I'm better than the guy starting ahead of me, but for whatever reason, and politics, parent, whatever, swimming was the sport he knew. He's like, okay, I don't belong on the A 400 free relay because I am the 700 freestyler on the team. Or in his case, he would go, or when you middle distance swimmers would jump into the fray and jump me in line because you could put out a decent 100 free. And I said, I wasn't that guy. I don't want to hear it from you. But
it is about depth charts. And I mean, I'm blessed to be able, and going back to the question about, well, how do you make the club and how do you make, the high school thing work? Well, I mean, that's the beauty of having times, that we can basically build and every month or every 2 weeks, we'll put this out. And, this is your number one, this is your number two, this is your number three. And, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I have the skill set to evaluate, soccer players, on a field and saying, okay, well, that person's better than that person. Or, that's a tough decision. I feel like my decisions are very easy, and I really don't get calls at the end of the season when we have to, announce a regional team or a state team. Of course, that's like putting together a puzzle, but, your top four, And then, that's kind of where a time's a time. So, that's the beauty of our sport for sure.
The greatest quote I ever heard from a swim coach was, no one cares less about your ego than a stopwatch. And there is nothing more true in this universe than that. Times will tell you everything you need to know. And there have been some times where I have made the situational call where I was splitting hundredths of a second. Right. But I also know this kid's relay exchange is phenomenal. And the hard one for me, and I'm sure you have to go through the same thing when you're putting together your regional lineup, is for us at the collegiate level, we can only score 18 athletes. So if I've got 24 guys on my roster, that means 6 of them are going to be non-scoring. So that's 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th spots are all battling it out. And that's where you have to get a little more tactical. And I'm sure you have to do the same thing when putting together your lineups for your regions and ultimately then on to state. But that's the only area that I've ever said with swimming that you have to do some strategy, because otherwise, like for me, when I have dual meets, here's my best lineup, there's your best lineup, winner takes all. Like I know coaches that get really like strategic and they're going to make changes on the fly. I don't have that kind of attention span. Now, here's my lineup. You win. I got nothing for you. And I just want my athletes to go out and race. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, obviously you have a book, Culture Delivers Excellence. I need to get a copy of that. And I want to get with you to get a copy of that because I went searching on Amazon and couldn't find it. So, but I got to get with you on that. And you talked about it when we made connections to do this show about developing culture. And I want you to talk a little bit about the process that you've gone through to developing the St. X culture there at your school.
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, and that was kind of a cool project. Basically, the concept of the book was, it was kind of built around our core values and what we've established here, what we've built here, in this program. And then it kind of ends I do a weekly email with my team, and I do this thoughts on excellence is what I do. So at the end of kind of each chapter, I have actual emails or actually just, different, kind of words of wisdom that, given the team, throughout 14 years of working here or whatever. So it was kind of cool to put it all together and kind of, compilate it, in one book. So that's kind of the premise of it. And basically, we're always looking to, teach our students like, well, as I said, how to max their potential, but not only in the water, but outside of the water too. And I think one of the things, there are many, I guess, kind of milestones that have happened here, over the course of, the years. But I think really, it's kind of sticking. I think you've got to establish core values. And I can't put enough emphasis on that because I think that, the more that you can simplify things to students, the better. And, a perfect example of that is one of our big core values is respect. We talk to our students about, well, you can have all of these rules or you can choose to be respectful toward one another. And that's one of the things that, we really try to make it quite simple. And if your behavior is not respectful, then don't do it. And, and also I think teaching students, well, what is the end game to that? I mean, if you're going to, with social media and all of these different outlets that these kids have, I mean, if you were going to say something negative about a person, well, what are you trying to accomplish by that? So, I mean, trying to get into their mindset, really trying to talk to them about and trying to educate them on, being positive. I think that's one of the things that, that we have done, in this program. I don't think you can have a championship program built on fear or built on, negativity. I think that, I've learned a lot of, I really enjoyed John Wooden's books and the Pyramid of Success. And, and I think that, someone that really employed that, that growth mindset. And I think that, not anything against Bobby Knight, but if you put the two, coaches, different styles, both were successful, but very much different styles with growth versus kind of that fixed mindset. And, so I've kind of always gravitated, more toward the Wooden side of things. And, I think compassion is one of our values here also. So, we've really tried to, kind of, build on that and build on details and build on communication and build on these things that, are really just creates opportunities. And I think that, when students come into our program, and our program has this, this great reputation, it's just really kind of digging deep and getting underneath the surface levels of these students and just, allowing them to, giving them the opportunity to max their potential. That's just such a big part of our culture and such a big part of, of what we do here at St. X.
I know one of the things that I have struggled with is that communication side. I've talked about it on a couple other shows, and I know other coaches, especially those of us who are getting older, and I'm part of that generation because we were all just basically do this because you were told. And I think it's critical right now with this group of athletes is that you are clear and they understand what the vision is of your program. And again, like you said, the values of what you guys stand for at St. X or what we stand for here at Cumberland's or what other people stand with their programs, because you have to have the respect of the program, the coaches, and your athletes to deliver that kind of success. And there, I just used part of the title of your book, Delivers Excellence and Success. And I think for me, I have a lot of international students, and the biggest transition they have found they have to make, and it's one of the beautiful things I love about high school swimming, they're not used to dual meets. They're not used to that excitement. They're used to more of an individualized mindset, and getting them to buy into a team concept usually takes a little bit longer than, say, a athlete who has done high school swimming. And I've seen it with athletes that do exclusively club. They won't do high school, whatever the reason. And I've always loved that high school dual meets, the energy that is brought with it, and the team aspect, because you are trying to score points for a win. And high school scoring is way crazier than college. In college, if you win an event and you get fifth place, you win the event point wise. And high school swimming, it's 6-4, 3-2-1 still, right? In a duel?
Yeah, correct.
So you win an event, you get fifth place, you're outscored 9-7. Right. And I wish we would do that in college, because I have lost too many dual meets because somebody has a stud and fifth place and I'm caught in the middle. Talk to me about the energy and the excitement that you guys have in your dual meets, and how that helps foster more of the team culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's game days are great around here. And I think that, it's, as I said, we have a very unique experience, and just with the number of students that we have on the team, and then just the student body. I think that, that's what's so unique about St. X, is that we talk about brotherhood and we talk about support, but I really feel like our students do, come out and support one another. I mean, when we swam Cincinnati in a dual meet, and, you sell 300 plus tickets to a high school dual meet, I mean, that's something that you can't, you just can't take that for granted. And I think, our alumni are invested in it. Obviously our current students are invested in it. Our future students are invested in it. And I think that's kind of, that's what you hope to build, or that's what you hope to accomplish. And I think that, that's what's just so cool about the situation. And I think that's one of the things that, even when I was coaching club, I never felt like swimming was an individual sport. And I felt like, even with the age group teams that I've coached, I've always wanted them to be a team, or I've always wanted them to go out and race like a team. And, even when you have 4 of them in the finals of an, 8-lane pool, you still want them out there, kind of working together. You're pulling for all of them. And, I've just always believed that. I mean, maybe that comes from my, beginnings of the country club system, and the summer league swims in Louisville is crazy. There are like 90 summer league teams in Louisville, which is kind of the grassroots of swimming. So many kids do that at a young age. And, and that's one thing that makes our city different, is that you've got 5 and 6-year-olds that they're swimming at that age. And I've had many age groupers, they can't dribble a basketball because all they've done is swim. Where, different cities that may be a little different, but swimming's just real popular here, with a lot of the subdivisions having lap pools and teams and so forth. Kids are doing it at an early age. So, I mean, coaching back in the day, those, I felt like some of those dual meets in country club were like SEC games, it was just the patch. Everybody, you want to beat your neighbor, that's what it's all about. And so, I learned that early on, and I felt like, just kind of always, kind of accepted that, or just kind of embraced that throughout my career. And then, when I hit high school, it was like, oh yeah, this is right where I need to be. This is right in my wheelhouse, because it is. It's all about team, and it's all about, that's what we buy into, is just that team concept. And I think that, but kids love that. And I think that's what makes high school swimming so unique and so fun, where the dual meets are quick, they're fast, they're short. They're not like the 3-day club meet, or the 4-day, or now the 5-day club meet. I don't know if I have the stamina for that anymore, but it's, that's what makes it cool. And that's what makes it, it's being a part of the team. And, whether it be a relay, or whether it be, we have our students, when we go to swim the 200 free, they all walk up to the block together. And when we swim the 2 IM, all of our students walk to the block together. And I think that, they leave the warm down pool, and they all parade down there as one group, as one team, whether that be 4 of them, 8 of them, or 12 of them. And, so we not only push the team concept in the relays, but we push the team concept, in the individual events as well. And it's always fun to see the seniors walk up with the freshmen, or walk up with the underclassmen, and just push that, like, hey, look, we're out, we're one, we're going to swim as one. And, it's just something that, that we really believe in, it's very, very important to our program.
I was fascinated. I grew up in the summer league system in Ohio, and there were tons of programs in where I was at. But when I got down here to Southeastern Kentucky, the first thing I was told was not a lot of swimming here. And there's one club team. There's a few. At the time, there was only one or two high school teams. Now there are more since we have the Stivers Center in Barberville. But I was fascinated. There were like 7 or 8 different summer league teams that were all within about an hour of each other here, and that there was interest. I'm like, why is this not growing? And then I realized there's so many other sports that are going on that these in such smaller communities that these kids are getting pulled in so many different directions. But hearing that there's 90 summer league clubs in the Louisville area, I know now down in Georgia and at the Atlanta area, that summer league down there is the largest thing I've ever seen. I think it's 130 different teams, and they have to have their championships at Georgia Tech because it's the only thing big enough.
No.
So that is fascinating from that standpoint. From I guess transitioning, as we're going to start wrapping things up here, but transitioning off of that team identity, that team focus where everybody's walking to the blocks and together. How do they get initiated into the program here? Do you have your captains talk to them? Do you have meetings with them? Or when a freshman walks, I'm a freshman guy, I'm coming to you, Coach Larkin. Right. Walk me through that. My first days.
No, great question. It is an educational process, no doubt. And I think that, we will sit down and we'll start, we start talking to our freshmen, as early as possible. I mean, registration was a month and a half ago, so we already have a lot of the kids who are coming in, but, we will, of course, it's voluntary, but we will meet with them, in August, during that voluntary time frame that the KHSA has. And, we'll speak with them, we'll talk to them about, team standards. One of the things that we do is, we try to develop different standards. I'm not a big rule guy. I know that sounds odd, coaching high school boys, but we're more into the standards because I think the standards promote ownership. I think they promote more engagement than for me to sit down and mandate rules. So what we'll do is we will break them up into smaller groups. A lot of our upperclassmen will lead those smaller groups, and they will come up with standards, or they will come up for, I guess you could say, goals for the upcoming season. And then we'll come together as a team and we'll discuss those goals. We'll discuss those standards. So I think from day one, they have input. I feel like they're involved in that process. And like I said, we don't try to bring in the process from what we did 20 years ago. So they feel like, and I think that's one of the things, you talked early on about the streak or about, our state championship, championships. But I think each team, it's important that they have their own individual identity. And I think because, this year was this year's team, the 2022-2023 team. But next year, you have to make the 2023-2024 team feel like they are that team. And so we do that through communication. We do that through team meetings. We do that through goal setting. And I think that, a lot of it does kind of fall into place. And I think that, we've been very blessed to have just some incredible, strong leadership. And we've been blessed to, when these guys, some of these guys have anticipated wearing that St. X cap for years now. We've met them either in clinics or we've talked to them when they were 4th, 5th, and even 6th graders that, they just want to be a part of that. And they want to, and I think that because our team is competitive, they know that if they get that shot or they get that opportunity, they're expected to swim at their best. So, I think that's kind of the system, and I think that's how it works. And I think that, we've seen where these freshmen, when they do enter this program, they want to leave their mark. They want to, one of the things that we talked with them about this year was, in our opening meeting, I held up 2 jerseys. I'm a big Chicago Blackhawks fan. I'm a big hockey guy. I go from water to frozen water quite often. I showed him a Patrick Kane, who is no longer with the team anymore. I showed him a jersey that I used to wear at the Chicago games. And then I showed him a jersey that was signed. And I asked him, well, which one's worth more? And, 100% of them are, well, the jersey that's signed, that's the one that's worth more. And I'm like, yeah, you're correct. The jersey that I bought that I wear to the hockey games 10 years ago, it's probably not worth much at all. But, it's that is worth more because that person left their mark. And that's what we're always constantly trying to get our students to do, is leave your mark. That's what's important to us. And I think that this year's freshman class really embraced that, and they really got behind that. And they really, just throughout goal meetings, they were constantly trying to live up to that expectation. So I think that's part of it, is just letting them know the expectation. As you mentioned earlier, I think you have to be very, very intentional. And I think that, with what those expectations are, and what that code of conduct, or what it means to be, in this program, and what's expected of them. And we are very upfront with that communication.
You said it right there. It's a different variation on the same theme I have as a coach. You said, leave your mark. Here at Cumberland's, the phrase that I echo to my athletes is define your legacy. How do you want to be remembered? And there's only three ways: positively, negatively, or not at all. And I think the last one is the worst, because then you're just a name on a roster. So I love the fact that you are making that communication with your incoming freshmen, and they have an understanding of what's expected of them and what the standards that they have to live up to. I think that's something that every coach, whether you're club, college, high school, summer league, that's something that they can definitely take away. Last thing I have for you, Coach, is a little segment. We call it 650s on the top. I give you 6 topics. You have to pick one or the other. A little side note, I do love the fact that you got the Chicago Blackhawks hockey thing going on. I'm married a North Sider, so Chicago fan right there. I'm from Northeast Ohio, so we don't really have hockey. We got the Blue Jackets in Columbus years later. So I never grew up with it, but she's more of a Chicago fan, so the Blackhawks definitely would be huge for her. But so our 650s on the top. First one, with your peanut butter and jelly, crust on or crust off?
No, crust on.
4th of July or Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday. I got to go with Thanksgiving.
When you were in school, would you rather give a speech or write a paper?
I'll give a speech.
French fries or onion rings with your hamburger?
I'll go French fries.
Sweater or hoodie?
Hoodie, definitely.
Which relay do you like more, the 200 medley relay or the 400 freestyle relay?
The 800 free isn't a part of that.
I'm just going off the high school order of events.
Okay. What 200 what?
200 medley relay or the 400 freestyle relay?
We just went 257 in the 4 free relay this year. That was huge. But we went 126 in the 200 medley. I'm going to go. I got to go 200 medley, just the fact because that opens up and that kicks off the meet. So I got to go. That's a big one right there. So
see, my freshman year of high school was the last year that the 200 freestyle relay was not in the high school order of events, and it was the last year of the old bucket turns for backstroke. I was sophomore year is when the rollover happens.
Yes, change the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes, I have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt how old I am. But I will tell you, I used to do a dual meet with Asbury University when their old head coach was there. And we would never do the traditional college order of events. We'd do some crazier ones. We did the high school order of events one time, and with the same rules of number of events and everything along those lines. My kids who were from high school remembered how much they hated it because of how much little time they had. My international kids lost their minds. They're on the pool deck after the they're like, who does this? And I go, every high school in America, boys and girls. So welcome to the U.S. High School Swimming System order of events. It was always so crazy how fast a meet would go. I used to love the diving break because it gave me a chance to take a breath. Especially when it was single gender meets. I felt like we had the 200 medley relay, and 5 minutes later was the 400 free relay.
Oh, yeah, it's quick.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you so very much for being on the show. Everybody out there, you can follow St. Xavier Boys Swimming and Diving on Instagram and on Twitter at STX Tiger Swim. At both those locations. I'm going to get the link of where they can buy your book, and we'll put it in our bio so that people, if they're interested in getting it, can click on that and, buy that merch. Get those sales up for you there, Coach.
And Coach, real quick, I want to thank you for doing this. Thanks for having me on. It was great. I really appreciated speaking with you. And thanks for all you do for swimming. I mean, I think that's one of the things that, as coaches, that's part of our, we have to get the word out there and we have to promote our sport. And I think it's great and just wish you well and would more than happy. I would love to come on again if you ever want to have me on as a guest, but thanks for doing this for the sport. And thanks for all you do for swimming.
I've always believed that in our sport, probably more than any other, fostering ideas, cultivating relationships, and mentoring other coaches is critical to the success of our sport. I know I'm on the board of directors with the CSCAA. I'm going to be talking with some major players in NISCA, ASCA, all those organizations at some point. So I will be having at some point a high school roundtable where I'm going to get several coaches from across the U.S. so we can do a big one this summer, especially with the high school coaches. You guys have a little more downtime at that point, so I can get all of you guys on. But we'll definitely have you back on the show down the line. So good luck next season, and we'll be following along with your success.
Coach.